Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm going to try to do one of these every week on something sort of unique. And I've long since promised that I would do a walkthrough of my remote station and what it looks like. Now, this is not something you can throw together overnight. And I've been at this for quite a while, and I've been through 3 or 4 versions. And if you've seen my broadcasts or my talks at Dayton or whatever, you'll sort of understand some of the history. Um, Sorry about the lighting here, but in order to get you a good shot of what happens in this magic box, I've got a laptop sitting on a ladder and then a big painter's light in behind. So there's a few shadows, and we get mosquitoes because I'm in Ontario and it's hot out, and I'm in this nice shady area and mosquitoes. So you'll see me swatting them around a bit, but we'll see how this goes. This is I'm just going to wing it. I'm not in my normal studio at home, so I can't nicely edit it and put in some graphics, but it'll give you a clue of what's going on. I started this remote project about 2005 when I moved from one part of Toronto to another, and I couldn't hear anything. And I quickly learned then that RF noise varied in different parts of the world. It's also fortunate that my fiance at the time has this cottage, family cottage that I had access to, and it's a big piece of property, and it had some internet. And so the early days of remoting were back in 2005, and I just had a PC, and I had a TS480, and I used Ham Radio Deluxe on a Vox and an HF6V antenna, and I was on the air. It wasn't great, but it was on the air, and I could hear things. So I really enjoyed that. And then it just, I'm a tinkerer and I love integrating stuff, so it just had to get better, and it did. So, and by the way, let me know if you can hear me, because I'm sort of solo here. I've got no corporate support behind me. I see a couple of check marks here, and if I go to the comments, which I can see for a bit, I'll comment on those as well. So that became more elaborate with remote rig and a whole bunch of stuff. Hi, Bob. And then about 2014 or 13, when I saw the Flex 6300 come out, and it had a LAN connector on the back, and I immediately saw what they were doing, and I cornered Steve Hicks in Dayton, and long before I worked here, and Steve said, "Yeah, this is what we're thinking," and I knew Steve and what he did, and where his brain and Gerald's brain and Eric and stuff, and so. Once they came out with a radio that was IP addressable, the writing was sort of on the wall. And IP addressable means we start to use these, LAN connectors and stuff, and that's how we talk to a FlexRadio. We also support some of the legacy methods using RS-232 and CAT. But like every other radio, every OEM radio out there, they've got one RS-232 port. Maybe it's got two, and I'm sure someone's going to call me out on this, but in most cases, it's got one RS-232 port, and then you have to get creative on the back end. You wanted to control your antennas, your bandpass filters, your amplifier. Oh, my logging program. Well, geez, WSJT needs to know what frequency I'm on, and then JT alert. Well, I can get it from WI. You get the idea. And so that all rolled into, becomes a big ball of wax, and it worked really well, but sometimes it didn't, and then you had to figure it out. And we've gotten as we moved into the 6400 and 6600 series, well, even into Smart SDR version 1, became more plug and play. It just generally worked, and it got better. In the 5,000 days or 3,000 or 1,500 days, PowerSDR was a wonderful tool, and it still is, and it's a great tinkerer's tool. You can fine tune bins and noise blankers and stuff, and but that's not where the amateur base is today. So anyway, I digress. So I wanted to walk through my remote, and I just finished writing up a long email to a possible customer about, hey, I'm going to remote. You guys have probably thought about this. I got a place in New York. I'm going to go to Florida for the winter, and I want to be able to use my radio in the Catskills. So what do I do? And sadly, there's no simple answer. This is the way I do it. It's not necessarily the way you might do it, but there's no black box. There's no extra box we can stick down here and say, well, that's going to control my rotor, disconnect my antennas, turn my 240 power off or my 120 power off, and all the little extra bits that we have to consider. And as I've said many times, think of every button you generally can reach out and push. You can't reach out and push it anymore. And I said that even on the Hamfest stuff I was on the weekend, and I've repeated it over and over and over. So that's a bit of the challenge, but it's also the fun. I really enjoyed, the aha moment when this all worked. And when I started it, nobody was doing it. It was bleeding edge, and you'd find a couple of guys. So anyway, let's walk through stuff. Web switches are the heart of this, the ability to turn things on and off remotely. And you're gonna have to break out a screwdriver and some wire strippers and do a bit of wiring, but it's not real complicated. And if it's foreign to you, spend some time looking into it. It's not a big deal. But one thing I want to stress in any remote environment, and especially in the Flex world, if you're going to go down this route, please, two things: no Wi-Fi. Get rid of Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi bad. Only because we can't control it at the speed we want to. Wi-Fi has to share data with other clients, even your neighbors. It has to share bandwidth. I've gone and I've done a whole lot of data gathering on how Wi-Fi falls apart, and it's in the Flex community. And I did it before the Maestro came out, because I could see the writing on the wall. Or actually, it was when SmartLink came out, so the beginning of version 2. So it's just that you can't control it, and even though you're 2 feet away from your router, my access point here in the boathouse is right above my head, right there. It just links this thing, but I have no neighbors for 200 or 300 yards. But if I had a neighbor 30 yards away, the RF from that access point does not stop at the border, at the fence line. As we know, radio sort of carries on, and that's a bit of a challenge. So what it has to do, even though we're not communicating with it, your neighbors, that is, if your neighbors' kids are all streaming, or heck, the adults could be streaming, who knows what they're watching, but if they're fully consuming their bandwidth over there, and you're on one of the many common channels, my access point has to wait for a clear channel. And it's like the old packet radio days where you had all this 1200 baud packet going on, and everybody gets their moment to send their so many bytes of data. And that still goes on today, even in the current Wi-Fi world. So get off Wi-Fi if you can. It's really an issue. It will improve your performance. What I did in my house, by the way, and I tell everybody on the phone, is take all your Apple TVs and all your streaming devices and figure out a way to cable them. Your kids, or YL or whatever, or XYL, or even yourself, when you're watching Star Trek on streaming it or something like that, you'll get a better you'll have a better viewing experience the more you can pull stuff off Wi-Fi, because it's just overloaded. And I can go on for hours. I actually worked in it as a business, so I got a fair bit of background behind how it works and how it breaks. But trust me on this one. The other thing is, plan to put a PC at the radio end. That's what this is here. And there's a couple of reasons for that. From a FlexRadio perspective, if you have to update the software, you have to do it from a local PC. Yes, there are ways around that, but this just makes it easier. Also, when I want to set up to run WSJT or FLDigi, which I don't use, or any other digital modes, I run it all on this local PC, and then I remote desktop to it using TeamViewer, AnyDesk, VNC, whatever, Google Desktop, whatever tool you have. And that way I only have to set up one, get it working. And by the way, I see all you guys, so good morning, Vin. See you. And so that's the advantage of the local PC. In 16 years of running remote, I've always had a local PC. It's never been the problem. It's always been something else. They're incredibly reliable. You get it so that when the power comes on, it automatically reboots and comes up. And I highly recommend Windows 10 Pro. And I had Windows updates disabled for a while, but I've turned them back on now since everything's stabilized for us. So that's why we put a PC locally. It's not a big deal. Don't let it scare you. There's a lot of people that can help you through that if you're new to that. Next thing we have to deal with are web switches. Now, I use these KM-tronic, I'm going to drop out of view here, these KM-tronic web switches. They're about 60 euros or something. Not necessarily inexpensive. I like them. There are lots of other solutions, but I like them because they have a very simple web interface. So I can turn them on. I've got 8 and 8, so there's 16 there. And believe it or not, I'm using 10. But it does give me the access to do a few more. and things, and I'm always adding switches and stuff. So, and they actually will talk to other things, but in the simplistic world, the KMtronic web switch has a little simple web GUI. You could access it from an iPhone or an iPad just by doing a bit of port forwarding. We're going to go a bit probably deeper than you like, but there's also web switches you can buy at Home Depot, Walmart that are iPhone based, and they work fine. I don't like them because they have their own server in the middle, and I'm a trust no one sort of person. So I like to make sure that if that server goes down, then it's not an issue. You also want to test your whatever web switch you use through a couple of power failures, and because I've had the iHome ones fail, I threw 8 of them out. I gave them to a friend of mine. Actually, I had the other really the Wemo ones. Same thing. They just go offline, and I called Wemo tech support or iHome. I forgot which it was, and said, "Hey, my switch is offline." And they go, "Oh, it's no problem. Every once in a while that happens. Just unplug it and plug it back in." And dude, it's like 200 miles away. How am I going to do that? You're telling me I need another web switch for my web switch. So you see how that conversation, it didn't go well. So that's what these do. The other thing you're going to have a problem with, and I guarantee it, is every once in a while your internet's going to go offline. And the simple fix will be, how do I reboot my modem if I'm 100 miles away? And the easy way is to put in some sort of Christmas tree timer that reboots your modem every day at 3 o'clock. So if it goes offline, and sorry for the shadows, if it goes offline, at least at 3 in the morning, the modem and the router, it'll recycle. There's also a bunch of devices on Amazon. They're designed to exactly do that, to reboot your modem. If it goes offline, it pings a bunch of things, and if it can't ping it, it assumes the internet's out. So you can look for those. So that's a lot easier today than it was when I got started. I had to roll my own, and the way I do that is this. Where is it? This Raspberry Pi way down here has one job in the world. It's to ping 3 websites every 20 minutes, and if none of them answer, then it turns the power off to the modem, which is up there. I have a separate firewall. I'd use a pfSense firewall. It's in that little cube beside it right here. And it's got a script in it that if the internet goes offline, it also reboots itself. It checks once every 20 minutes or something. Don't want a constant check. I didn't want to load up my internet. So that's what that does. We've talked about the web switches. We have another Raspberry Pi here. It does a bunch of weird stuff, but one of them is it runs NodeRed. So I'll talk about NodeRed in a minute. That's advanced networking or advanced remote operating, but we've got a whole discussion in the Flex community about that. And then it also, believe it or not, it monitors the water level here in the boathouse because the government didn't do a good job. So I get updates every 20 minutes if the water goes up and down way too much. It gets me worried. A little not related to ham radio, but sort of related to ham radio is this box here. It's the Lightning Map receiver. So if you're on lightningmaps.org, you look northeast of Toronto and you'll see Bob Cajun, and I have a Lightning Map receiver. And if you're not familiar with lightningmaps.org, it's a great live lightning site. It's amazing. Really enjoy it. It's just fun to watch some days, and hugely accurate. And what it does is it's a collection of these receivers. So that's the receiver. Well, it's not really the receiver. The receiver's out in a tree, but it's a bunch of wire in a loop, a VLF, very low frequency receiver. It detects the lightning, or it hears the lightning, like on AM radio, if you're young enough or old enough to know what AM radio is. But the signature of what it sounds like, that crack we grew up with, timestamps it to within a microsecond on it, because this is GPS sync, sends it to a server in Germany. It gets all these reports from all over the world and plots it on a map, and then you get to see it. Pretty cool stuff. It was not an inexpensive project, but I was glad to be able to contribute to that. I have a W2W Meter here, and way up there, here, is a 403A 2x8 antenna switch. So I have 7 antennas on it, 6 antennas, a dummy load, and then I've got 2 of Elecraft's wattage probes hanging off it. And then it comes down to the watt meter, and because the watt meter has an RS-232 connection, I can get the data from that, and I read that with my NodeRed screen. But You can also read that with the tools that Elecraft provides, and you run those tools on your PC that is local, so you can see it. Way back here, you'll see it says rotor, stepper, W2, and it said amplifier, but there's nothing plugged in the amplifier anymore. That is four RS-232 ports plugged into a Raspberry Pi. It's made by StarTech. It was about $100 Canadian, and it's been rock solid. And that goes into my NodeRed stuff. More about that again later. But so that controls the turning of the beam, the frequency of the stepper, and the watt, me reading the frequency off the W2W meter. Now, where's the amplifier? Well, I have a PGXL amplifier way down here, and that's it there. And it's all LAN based, meaning that I only have to hook up the RF in, the RF out, and a LAN cable to it. The radio sees the amplifier, behaves like one big 1500 watt radio, which is really slick. There's no RCA cable for push to talk. It's all built into the LAN cable. Nice thing is if it also supports OEM radios as well. It takes a bit more wiring. And I have a whole video on that on the Flex website, introduction to the PGXL. It's also incredibly efficient because they have an algorithm, an SDR algorithm in the amplifier called MEFA, maximum efficiency frequency algorithm. And it produces a lot less heat in some modes. So most amplifiers are about 30–35% efficient in most digital modes. You got low drive. If I turn MEFA off, which is an option, let's say I was running CW, I can, 20 watts will drive it to full 1500 watts, but it does produce a lot of heat. And hi, Ron. And but if I turn MEF on, I need to up my drive to about 60 watts, and I still get full power, but I go to 70% efficiency from a heat perspective. And because this is a closed box, that really helps me. Hi, Farrell. As I'm getting caught up, who do I see? I got Joshua, Richard, Thomas, Vagel. Okay, W's or VVs or W's. No matter what, I'll pronounce it wrong, so I apologize. Vin, I got Louis from Florida. Ron, I said hi, and Farrell. So, and if you're watching this later, of course, I can't say hi. So what else we got? These little digital logger I/O switches, they're controlled by Raspberry Pis. These are the ones that turn the routers on and off, or the modem on and off, the PC power on and off. And way down at the bottom here is a big, way down at the bottom, 70 amp Astron power supply and it provides the heat for the box in the winter. So I've got the, Ken, I'm sorry, I forgot you from Dayton. This PC generates a fair bit of heat. I was going to replace it with a Nook because it's nice and small and don't generate much heat. But again, I need this heating for the winter. Now I know I could put a light bulb in here. All the tricks we use as repeater operators. So what else we got? We've got, this is a 16-port web LAN switch, and I counted the other day. 14 of those ports have to do with something in this box. So whether it's these web switches, the lightning map, the 2 Raspberry Pis, you get the idea. And hey, John, you can catch up from the beginning, and David and Mike. So that's what they do. This box, by the way, I built in place. There's some, there was some old construction here, and I just started, okay, we're going to put a wall here, and I did it by hand. We've got a GPSDO on, there's a 6700 down here. This is, the company uses this one for testing. This is my 6600. And I mounted it this way so it was easy to get to the connectors on the back and the PC. Turning around so that you get the nice front. Looked cool, but it was a pain in the butt when I wanted to change a feed line and or pull it out if I had to change anything. What else we got? Okay, so people have emailed me and asked because they've seen pictures. What's the red thing? So this is called an R2D2, and a very close friend of mine, Stuart, works for fire protection. So he was here at our cottage. He goes, huh. He goes into his car, and he comes for, it was a couple of weeks later, he came back and handed me the R2D2, and it's a halon dump. They don't sell it anymore. It's expired. He goes, it's shitty. He goes, but to be honest, it still works. So just in case something was to happen, it would dump halon all over everything. And hopefully, you know, it's a shot in the dark. I have 3 fan systems. This fan here is controlled by this little control box here. And those guys that brew your own beer, I'm sure you know what that is on the outside that says temperature. So it turns on and off at 29 Celsius. On at 29, off at 28. The beer brewing guys use these a lot because I guess they're pretty critical about their beer. Hi, Steve and Javier. And so that is that fan system. This big fan here, which I got for $10 at a flea market last summer, is a 110 volt fan. It's actually controlled by one of the relays on the KM-tronic, which is driven by the NodeRed, which has temperature sensors on it. I'll show you that in a minute. And then flipping over to the PC world, I got on eBay. I found this little fan controller for $5, and then I'm going to put PC fans on. There's 4 holes here, so I'm going to put PC fans on 2 of them because 2 of them are intakes. And I haven't decided whether they're going to blow air in or suck air out, but that's the project for the weekend. So lots of things you can kludge together. Now let's see if this works. This is going to be entertaining because I haven't quite tried this. I'm gonna. Oh, here it is. So this is my NodeRed panel. How do I get that full screen? There we go. So NodeRed is a product written by IBM. It runs on a Pi or a PC or just about anything, or Linux based. And I'm not a programmer by any means, not even close. Let's see, can I get? That's what I want. So, but I was able to make this work, and it's sort of a GUI-based programming system, and so it's designed for machine-to-machine communication, and so we have a whole thread on this on the Flex community. But I wanted a panel that showed everything. I wanted to be able to show my web relays in the first column on the left. I wanted to know my power, and I didn't want all these apps scattered all over the place. But this is something you can worry about later. And so with the help of others like Dave, W2X, Andreas, and NR6U or NU, anyway, I apologize, Andreas. Actually, I can get his call. Let me just see if I can change screens here without messing up the world. I'll show you. I think this should show you the what the control panel looks like. This is what the NodeRed programming looks like. So it's not really code. It's different blocks of bits that read information, and we've got some plugins that I had a KPA 500 here that's all disabled right now. So N6NU, Andreas. So that's actually more of the reason I wanted to. So coming back to the control panel, in the left-hand side here, we've got all these little buttons. This 6600 and 6500 push-to-talk, that allows me to put the radio in a brief push-to-talk for smart link registration, even remotely. And it's very simple. I've got a relay tied to the CW keying line with a 1/4 or the 1/8 inch plug. You just strip some wire, and so I can, if I push it like this, the radio will briefly go into transmit. And if you notice up here, you'll see that went TXRX. The rotor data and stepper data are used to tell me that there's data coming from the tower, and the rest is stepper control. This is a bit of 40-meter wire beam control. And here's my temperature probes. The outside temperature here is 25 Celsius. The amp tray, which is down by the PGXL, it's a little warmer there. 30 Celsius is okay. It's warm, but it's not going to really hurt the equipment. I just turn stuff off when I don't need it. Hey, Brent, and another mic. So that's sort of what I've done. Yeah. So let me go back to me. That's it at a high level. If you're going to go down this project with you and a bunch of people, it's like buddy up with the repeater operator because he's probably been through all of this before. But it's, you know, one step at a time. You know, to set up in your house, your shack, and go somewhere else and see if it works. And then, you know, if you're away for a weekend, you are going to have to slowly build things up. And then if you're like a bunch of us that are away for months, look at what'll kill you. You know, what single point of failure will take you right offline, and you'll find a couple. And I still find I'll tell the UPS story that many have heard already. But hey, Brent. Last winter, so winter of January 2019, everything goes offline. The whole shack disappears. Phone the cable company and they go, yeah, you can't even ping your modem. Okay. So of course, it went off on a Monday morning. It was about 35 below Celsius. It wasn't quite that cold. Maybe it was about 30 below. I couldn't get up there till Thursday. We were pretty busy at work. So I drove up after work, and as I'm wading in the snow up to my knees, I could hear from the boathouse, beep, beep, beep. And what had happened was the UPS had gone offline. In fact, the batteries froze on it, and I didn't keep it warm enough. So I could live with the batteries freezing. I could live with the UPS going offline, but it shut off all the AC power on the back end. So that took off all the computers eventually. And so I take the UPS out and I throw it out in the snow because it's lost its moment in fame. I power everything up. Everything comes up. The radio comes up. The 6600 right up, no problem. The everything came up, but the Raspberry Pi in the B26 amplifier that I was using at the time. So I trudge over to the main house, and and it's shut down for the winter. And I find a hairdryer, and I come back, and I'm blowing hot air on the Pi. And eventually it starts up, and I just closed up the door and went home, and everything ran for the rest of the winter without the UPS. Did I talk about lightning? It did not. So what do I do about lightning? I have the arc plugs scattered all over the place and grounded, but nothing will prevent me from a direct strike. The 403A antenna switch grounds everything, but if lightning does hit, there will be damage. It's just a challenge or something I have to live with. You can search on the internet where guys have taken a linear actuator and it pulls the feed lines apart. That's a little bit better. I'm actually going to build one of those with 10 ports on it, and so I can really just pull all those cables apart. I turn all my AC power off. My modem stays online, of course, and so I'm trying to limit the damage if something was to happen. But there is no, as I say, there is no app that takes a feed line and throws it out the window, which you're supposed to do. And I have a lot of wire antennas up in 90-foot trees, so that's it's touch wood. It's not if, I guess it's when, but it's been 15 years, touch wood. But I've had nearby strikes in the property and not a thing. And one of them woke my wife and I up at about 3 in the morning, and the strike was 10 feet away and exploded the tree beside us, beside the bedroom. And if you've been through one of those, that's a whole new sound of lightning. It'll wake you up, and there were tree bits everywhere because the sap all explodes, and you can smell the ozone. So it's pretty cool, actually. We were safe, of course, but those, I'm sure, in Florida and other lightning capitals of the world have been through that. So that's the tour of the HF station, and I hope you find it useful. And you said this is the way I did it. There's lots of ways to do it. If you've got questions, feel free to ask them. I like answers from people who ask questions that put some detail in their answers and go, rather than, and if you haven't figured me out yet, I don't have any time for people and say, that sucks. Okay, well, why does that suck? Tell me why that won't work. Give me some, I want to learn. So I ask all of you too that have been around for a while, that we have some younger hams and newer hams. We have a great group here too. And they'll ask what seems to be some fairly simple questions, but before you answer, give it a thought. They probably just don't know. And give them a little history as to why this shadow's bugging me. How's that? That's even worse. Answer with some details so they can learn. and maybe be a little more effective. Remember, we were all young hams at one point in time, and we didn't know, crap. And we had some amazing Elmers and mentors, and I urge all of you to help out where you can, even if it's only from a keyboard. Take a minute and add some facts, maybe a link. And I try to do that a lot. And if I get sloppy, you're welcome to call me out on it, and I'll apologize. But all of us, there's some new guys coming on, and we were on the YouTuber stuff on the weekend. We had a great time, and hopefully a lot of people learned on that online broadcast. And yeah, so I thank you all for listening. It probably went a little bit longer. Wow, that's 30 minutes went by just like that. But I hope there's some clues there, and we'll catch you all later. We'll be on Friday again about 2:30 Eastern, or 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern, and no. And so Steve, let me answer the Linux question. We actually do support Linux. You can run and even Android for that matter. We do support it. The radio is wide open for you to communicate with it. We just need someone to do it. We Flex will probably not provide a Linux client. We won't do it, but that doesn't prevent anybody else or a group of people writing one. I looked at NodeRed and say, hey, can I pull in a waterfall and some audio streams and maybe see if I could hear something? So those hooks are all there. So we actually do support Linux. If someone was to take, I don't know, HDSDR and write a conduit to talk to a FlexRadio, there's no reason why it wouldn't work. All the data you need for that client is there. And we have wikis on it that talk about how to do it. I, as not a programmer, was able to retrieve the radio frequency, the IP address, and everything from the radio from my NodeRed screen. Let me put it back up here. If you'll see down here in the bottom, well, I can't put a mouse on it. In the bottom left, it says 6600 client. It shows the IP address that's currently connected to the radio. It's my Maestro in the other building. So, so all you Linux guys, you need to huddle around, and we'll even provide guidance and help. And so it's doable. The iOS client written by Marcus, DL8MRE, I hope I got Marcus's call correctly. He wrote the whole iOS app at home and then brought it to us. Same thing for Dog Park SDR, written by Dog Park Software in Toronto. He wrote, he talks to all the radios as well. And if anybody wants NodeRed information, you can go to the community and search for NodeRed at community.flexradio.com. And it's got the flows there, so you can look at them. And somebody was asking, I don't know who it is, what his call sign is, or what his name. So feel free to get the data there. So most of the stuff's shared already. Even if we share it, you're going to have to modify it to make it work in your situation. But good chat on NodeRed stuff there, and we'll see more and more. So yeah, that's it. Thanks again. Have a great day. Stay cool if it's warm, and stay safe otherwise. And whatever, here it's northeast of Toronto. 2 weeks ago it was snowing. Today we need air conditioning. So those in the northeast know what I speak. Take care. Had a great time.